Ever wondered how hackers exploit human trust to steal your data? What if you could spot and stop phishing, malware, and social engineering attacks before they cause damage? In this video, I'll reveal the sneaky tactics hackers use, from buffer overflow attacks to phishing scams, and show you how to protect yourself and your network. Whether you're an IT pro or just managing your personal data, these tips will keep you one step ahead of cybercriminals. Ready to outsmart hackers? Let's dive in. When a malicious person intends to launch an attack on a target, this person could first try to identify certain vulnerabilities in order to carry out an even plus effective attack. This is called a reconnaissance attack. In this type of attack, the attacker can use certain tools to discover certain information, such as the owner of a domain and the IP address ranges that are used there. For example, the lookup command that exists in many operating systems allows you to perform a DNS lookup in order to resolve an IP address from a domain name. If an attacker knows the domain name of a company, then this command can reveal the owner of the domain, as well as the IP address range that is registered there. There are also the whois and dig commands, which are complementary tools that can query the DNS to reveal detailed information about domain owners, contact information, mail servers, name servers, etc. With this information, the attacker will be able to ping each IP address in the target range. Hosts that respond to these pings will then become potential targets. There are even tools that allow you to scan TCP and UDP port numbers, allowing you to know which number a host would answer on. It must be kept in mind that a reconnaissance attack is not a real attack. It's just to collect information about systems and services with the goal of discovering vulnerabilities that could be exploited by another type of attacks. Now, we're going to move on to an attack that overloads the buffers. Operating systems and applications read and write data, normally using buffers. It is a temporary memory space. Buffers are important when one system is communicating with another, as IP packets and Ethernet frames come and go. As long as this temporary memory is fully usable, then everything should work as expected. The problem is that some systems and applications have vulnerabilities, which can cause a buffer to overflow. This means that data that cannot be processed by the buffer can spill over into other memories, provided that the system agrees to exceed the buffer's limit. An attacker can exploit this flaw, sending very large data, which will cause the buffer to overflow to another area of memory, which will eventually crash the service or even the entire system. The attacker could even insert malicious code into the new memory area, which will be executed without the system noticing. Now, let's move on to the malware. Some types of threats can take the form of malware. For example, a Trojan is malicious software that is hidden and packaged in other software that looks normal and legitimate. If a user decides to install it, then the Trojan will also be installed, but silently. It will then be able to execute its own attacks on the system and even on other systems. This type of malware can only spread from one computer to another through interaction with the user. For example, opening attachments in emails, or the downloading of software from the internet, which is then copied to a USB stick to be moved to another computer. Another type of malware is viruses, which are malicious software that can spread more easily between systems. Another type of malware that can spread to other systems to infect them is the worm. Here, it is the attacker who will develop software containing the worm and deposit it on another system. It is from this moment that the worm will replicate and contaminate other systems through their vulnerabilities. To summarize, here is a table that lists the types of malwares we have seen. We also have adware, which, when we are affected, will display advertising on our system. Finally, on the subject of malware, there is spyware, which is a spyware capable of monitoring your activity. For example, it is able to retrieve your credit card data if you buy on an e-commerce site. Human vulnerabilities. There are still many other attacks that can succeed by exploiting the weaknesses of humans who use computer systems. Type of attack and their objective. A fairly simple attack could simply be based on human trust, social engineering. For example, an attacker could impersonate an IT staff member and, as a result, attempt to contact legitimate users through a variety of means, such as phone calls, emails, or through social media. The main objective of this approach would be to convince them to reveal certain information, such as their identifiers or their passwords. Another method of attack by human vulnerability is the well-known phishing. This is a technique that attackers use to trick victims into visiting malicious websites. The idea is to trick users into entering their confidential information. There is also spear phishing, which will focus on a group of similar users, for example, from the same company, and will send them a convincing email, IEIU, with the company's header, and the email will contain a link to a malicious site. Another type of attack is whaling, which literally means whaling. It's very similar to the previous one, except that the target is more about high-level people, whether in companies or governments. Phishing is an attack that occurs on telephone communications. Smishing is about text messages. Farming is also an attack that consists of sending victims to a malicious website, except that it will do so in a more transparent and vicious way. That is to say, it is able to modify a DNS service, or the host file of the PC. That way, as soon as the victim enters the website address into their browser, they will be redirected to the malicious site. And the latest phishing attack, watering hole, is a technique where the attacker will directly deposit malware on the official website that the victim regularly consults. And this malware will infect only the affected victim, leaving other users unharmed.